Welcome to Good News Tucson TV, your TV news magazine covering Southern Arizona and faith-based news, events, and personalities. I'm glad to have my special guest today. Today's show is going to be a little different, and that's because our guest today is my wife, Jacquelyn Murray. Welcome, Jackie.
Thank you.
And we may break protocol, and for example, I wouldn't ordinarily do that to my guests, but this time
Let's hope not.
Yes, ma'am. I can get away with it. Jackie and I are going to talk about some of our life experiences growing up together, getting married and raising a family, and the challenges we've come across and had to deal with Jackie's health. She has a dynamic testimony about what we've been through and where we are today. And so Jackie, knowing that we've grown up together, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, literally, we have known each other all of my life. Barney always adds a year to how long we've known each other because he's a year older, but we have known each other ever since I was born. We grew up together in the same town, went to the same schools, went to the same church. We've never been apart from each other since the day I was born. So it's been a long time since we've known each other.
Yeah, we actually, you'll see a picture of us celebrating my second birthday and her first. And if you look closely, the little girl in the back that's who that was. And we grew up, like Jackie said, together, neighbors, same church. And I am one of 6 kids, and she's one of 5.
One of 5, I'm the oldest.
And she's the oldest. And so growing up together, and she had brothers, and because we were so close, her brothers were like my brothers, and she was like my sister. And so we played together, went to school together. Her brothers and I played basketball and bands together, made music. Everybody's a musician. And so we grew up with that. And it was really, even going through high school, even prior to high school, growing up together, Jackie was always my sister. So the thought of dating was really not an option. We had an attempt at, what was it, 9th grade or something?
You were 9th, I was 8th.
Yeah, and I just wasn't ready. But we grew through that, and in high school, we had dated other people, and but we came together after high school and college, looked around in the church, and we were the only ones left. And we were on a bus trip, right?
Yes, with the choir.
And that was kind of a pivotal moment, wasn't it?
Sure. You kind of realize, hey, there she is, still.
Yeah, there she is. And it was like, bam, that's not your sister. And the dynamics of our relationship changed. And we got married, started a family, moved to California, where we raised our 2 daughters. And you would think that us knowing each other for so long, that it would have made marriage easier, right?
You would think.
That wasn't the case, was it?
Well, no, I think now, 33 years in, I realize that marriage is never easy for anyone. And it takes work. What you did to get the person or get the person interested, you have to continue that. And there's nothing like living with a person to know who they are. And just because we grew up together and were raised in similar ways, we had never lived together. And so that was a challenge in our early years in marriage, just like any marriage.
Yeah, that is so true. And the unique thing about it is that I think what growing up did for us. If it did anything at all, it helped give us an insight and help to explain some things. You got to see my parents and our household and the kind of how we were raised and the other. But taking all that data in when we came to live together, it was quite a challenge to take the two personalities and biblically become one. And we're still working on it, right?
Oh, yeah. We're 33 years in and still working. We don't have the same challenges, but like I said, any marriage has challenges, and the further in you get, the challenges are maybe different, but they are still challenges just the same.
Knowing that, as we look back over the 33 years, what do you think was what did we have foundational to be able to last 33 years?
Well, I think we went in, as you know, we grew up in the church together, so we had a biblical foundation. Unfortunately, at the time we were growing up and the time we were dating and getting married and engaged, there was no such thing as premarital counseling. So we didn't have anybody to tell us or even to teach us how to make a marriage work. And so we determined within ourselves that divorce was not going to be an option. And so we had to work through that. If divorce wasn't an option, then the only other option is let's work through this so that we can remain married, but not just married, but happily married. So it took work, and it took the fact that we knew that divorce wasn't an option, and then our biblical foundation that we had to kind of trudge through it ourselves to make our marriage work.
And in doing that, that's with all of those good things there, we literally had to fight to stay in marriage and to stay married because society was making it easier for us to separate. There were so many outside influences that would kind of even promote, you don't have to go through this, you don't have to go through that, this is too hard, you didn't sign up for this and that. But we purposed in our heart to be together forever and divorce not being an option. So we both knew, no matter how bad things got, that we would never leave each other.
Right.
And I saw a comic that had that back in the day, an older couple walking down the sidewalk, and the caption was, when we got married, when things broke, you fixed it. Nowadays, when things break, and this is not just figuratively, within marriage, and we've just become a disposable kind of mindset where if it breaks, you replace it.
Right.
So one of the things that we've done, and knowing what we do know about marriage, our history together, both of us were heavily involved in couples ministry, Jackie with women, myself with men, and then with couples. We would mentor couples unofficially because we knew what they were going through. And so we wanted to participate in the success of those marriages. We had started what was family dinner, and we would have people over the church, from church over the house after service, and spend the afternoon. And then we had a couples Bible study that kind of came out of that. And there were nights where we literally were up till 9, 10 o'clock after the festivities were over, sitting and talking with couples and trying to help them through things. But we all knew that we couldn't do it and succeed without Christ being part of our life and the center of our lives, both individually and collectively, and that put things in perspective. When it came to working together, building a family together, being Christians, what are some of the things that you feel like need to be out there today that may not be when it comes to helping couples?
Well, I think any couple first, Christ has to be part of an individual's life. You have to know him individually, and then as a family, that is the foundation, so that there aren't like two different standards. So when we were raising our girls, there was no question that they were going to be part of the church. They were raised in the church. We were raised in the church. And that was something that our family did together. Our kids went to church from the time they were about 2 weeks old until they got grown and on their own. Even though they were grown and living in our house, they still had to attend church. And as young kids and through their teenage years, they participated in activities in the church. So we had one standard in our house, and that was the Word of God. And not that we were perfect, not that we did it all right, but that was our standard. And that's how we raised our children. And not that it made it easy or a piece of cake, but we always had the Word of God to fall back on, and those were the standards that we raised our children with.
Yes, and those standards and those children are the reason we are here in Tucson. Our daughters came here for school, graduated, got married, and as soon as we heard the word grandparent and grandchildren, that was our incentive to move, to bring our family back together again and be a part of our grandchildren's lives. And that's happened 7 years ago?
Yes, our first grandchildren. Our children, I don't know if they planned this or it just happened or they just worked on it at the same time, but they had their first children in the same year. So our oldest daughter had her son in May of 2006, and then our youngest daughter had her daughter in July of 2006. So we moved here in March of that year because we knew both the babies were on their way.
So the first set of grandchildren are 10 weeks apart,
Yes.
and then the second 2 years later?
2 years later, they did it again, and they both have boys that time, and they are about 5 weeks apart.
So we've been in Tucson 7 years, and we have now a total between our daughters here and my son on the East Coast, 8 grandkids.
8 grandkids.
8 grandkids, and we're happy about that. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of the, after getting here to Tucson and building a new life together here, we're going to talk with you about some of the things that we went through in transitioning to Tucson, and then after getting here, how God worked miracles in our lives and kept us going. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Good News Tucson TV. I'm Barney Murray, your host, and I'm here with my very special guest, my significant other. Not only that, my wife, Jacquelyn Murray. And we talked a little bit about our background during the first half. But since we've been in Tucson, when we got here, it seems like everything was great. It seemed like the only problem we had was finding a church home and some place to worship. But we came here with me very well employed, Matter of fact, I had two jobs when we first got here, a contract at IBM and a position, my former position at San Jose State University. And so I was kind of double dipping and keeping busy, and income wasn't an issue. And so everything looked well. The babies were great, the families were great, having Sunday dinner with your kids and your grandkids. Something we lived for, and all was well. And then as time progressed, I lost one of my jobs, the one in California, and didn't feel too bad about that because I still had a second position, which was full-time. So needs were still being met, and all was good. And Jackie started having a little issue with her ear, what we thought was a little issue, and it started out as a earache, right?
Yeah.
So she's going to explain exactly what that earache was.
Okay. It started in early 2007, actually. I went to my doctor for my yearly physical and checkup, and she had predicted the year before, if I didn't cut back on some of my eating habits, my bad eating habits, that I was probably going to be diabetic if I didn't get it together, as I like to say. And sure enough, I'm in the office early part of 2007, and I have been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. So a couple of months later, probably April or May of that year, I was back just for her to check my medications and see how I was doing with the diabetes. Earlier that week, I had this pain in my ear, and so as I'm, going through my checkup, I asked her, hey, can you just look in my ear? It's been bothering me lately. And she looked in my ear, and it looked inflamed and red as though it were an ear infection. And so she says, oh, yeah, it's an ear infection. I'll give you some antibiotics. I'm allergic to penicillin, so she prescribed something else that, I took for 10 days. And the earache felt better while I was taking the antibiotics. And a couple of days after I finished them, the earache was back. And I would go back, get more antibiotics. They would work for a while. The earache would come back, go back. The earache turned into some nasal problems. They thought maybe I had a nasal infection or a sinus infection. I'd have more antibiotics for that. Then it turned out I was having these really, really bad headaches that surprisingly were just on my right side of my head, which is the right ear was the ear that was bothering me. So now I have earache, horrible headaches, weird things going on with my nasal cavity that progressed into having lockjaw, which I didn't know it was lockjaw. I just knew I couldn't open my mouth wide. So this went on for several months, back and forth, changing medication, then getting kind of tired of going back and forth, so I wouldn't go to the doctor, and the headaches would get worse. And so finally, probably about June or July of that year, after many different antibiotics and taking ibuprofen for the headache that didn't work, my doctor said, I think I'm going to ask you to go to an ear, nose, and throat specialist because it just wasn't getting any better. And that's when you lost your job with IBM.
Yeah.
And so now we don't have any medical insurance. And so I had been dealing with this pain and dealing with these issues for so long, I decided, well, I'm just going to continue to deal with them and just suffer through it because we couldn't afford for me to go see a specialist at that time. You were able to get another position with IBM,
Right.
another contract position. I think you got it in September, or you started in September of that year.
Yeah, the position was through a temp agency, so they were able to get me back on board there, and that alleviated some of the financial pain that we were going through. And as a husband, not having a job was, in my mind, it was catastrophic for me. I was feeling defeated and somewhat of a failure. And then on top of that, my wife is sick, and I couldn't provide for her to go to the doctor the way she needed to go. And that's where my mode, needing divine help and needing God to help me manage this from a husband's perspective. And Jackie's going to the doctor, and there's a lot of dynamics that were changing. Our perfect life, so to speak, was starting to fall apart, and it seemed like we had no control over it.
Right. So once you were able to get another job, they offered some kind of like a discount insurance plan where you can go to the doctor, I think 6 times a year for a discounted rate. So I immediately made an appointment with an ear, nose, and throat doctor, but could not get in until October. And so I went in still dealing with the headaches and the earaches and the lockjaw and, any other symptoms that came along with it. Still thinking I had some kind of ear infection, but, I'd never had one before, so I had no idea what really was going on. I get in to see the ENT, and he does an examination. Of course, I go through the history of what had been going on throughout that year. And he looks in my ear. By now, I've lost hearing in that ear. And he says, I don't think you have an ear infection, but we need to look. So he did a hearing test, and he definitely determined that I had lost hearing in that ear. There was some kind of blockage. But he wanted to do a CT scan to see exactly what it was. This, I believe, was like a Tuesday, and early in the week, Monday or Tuesday. And so he said, I'm going to schedule a CT for you, and we're going to see what's going on. Later that week, Friday morning, I woke up. The headache was, if I could even imagine, was worse than it had been. Mm-hmm. And I noticed that this side of my face was a little swollen. And so I was very concerned because I had not felt that level of pain before, and I had not seen my face swollen. So I kind of dealt with it for the morning. I was talking to a friend from California and telling her I wasn't feeling so well, and she begged me, please go to the doctor. If you can't get in, please go to the emergency room. And I believe she called you.
Yeah, she did.
And said, make sure she goes.
Yeah.
And so I called the ENT, thinking I wasn't going to get in because he was so busy. It took me 6 weeks to get my first appointment. And the receptionist put me on hold, went and talked to the doctor, and she came back to the phone and said, he wants you to come in, get in here anytime you can today. Don't make an appointment. When you get here, we'll take you right back to see him. And I believe I called you and you met me at the doctor's office.
Yes.
And so we went in, and he asked if I had had my CT, and I told him they hadn't called me yet. He tried to examine my mouth, and I couldn't even open my mouth wide enough for him to put his finger in it. It was that much pain, and it was that tight. And so he called the CT company, radiology company, and made an appointment for me on Monday, gave me some pain pills for the weekend. And I went in on Monday. We went, it's about 8 o'clock in the morning. They did the CT scan. The technician was explaining what he was going to do and said that I'm going to do a CT of your neck. And I argued with him and told him it was my ear. He says, no, it's your neck. No, it's my ear.
She argued.
Well, because I thought I had an ear infection. He said, well, your doctor wants me to do a CT of your neck. And so we did the CT. We were home probably within an hour, hour and a half. And about half an hour to an hour after that, the doctor called and said that he got the results of the CT, and he wanted me to go back to the hospital to have a biopsy that same day. And so I'm a little concerned now because he says, I want you to have a biopsy. And so we go back to the hospital, and the pathologist explains the biopsy procedure, that he's going to do a biopsy of my neck. And again, I'm telling him it's not my neck, it's my ear. And he informed me that I had a lump in my neck. And I was a little surprised, and he showed me where it was, or let me feel it. And I had felt something there before, and I thought it was swollen glands after all of the issues I had with the infections and things. So I didn't pay any attention. And so now in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, this is a lump. This is a little more serious than an ear infection, but he hadn't done the biopsy yet. When he finished the biopsy, he said that he saw some abnormal shaped cells, but would get back to the doctor, and the doctor would call me. And so within my mind and within myself, I assumed it was some kind of cancer, but I also thought, well, they'll just take this lump out, and I'll be good to go.
Yeah, surgically remove whatever it was.
Sure. The very next day, the doctor calls, and he says, it's serious, and I don't want to talk about it over the phone. I want you to come in. And I asked if it was serious enough to bring my husband, because Barney was at work, of course. And he said, by all means. And so I was able to get in touch with Barney, and again, he met me at the doctor's office. And again, the doctor says, don't make an appointment. Just come in. When you get here, they'll bring you right back to me. And so I knew it was pretty serious because he is very busy, and the waiting room was full when we got there. But sure enough, they took us right back, and the doctor came in a few minutes after we were there.
Yeah, it was quite things happened so quickly. It seems like the whole process was taking from the time she started to feel a little pain to the time they were seen by the doctor. And when they finally got around to it, things got really accelerated really fast. We're running out of time, but we will be back with part 2 of Barney and Jackie's story. And we wish that and pray that you'll come back and join us again and hear the rest of the story. Bye now.